For an expert's opinion, I'd like to welcome on our guest, Mark Skeels, who has decades of experience in practicing law in Southern California. He's also currently running for Superior Court judge in San Diego, and he's now joining us in studio. So, Mark, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I know that impeachment is a political procedure. It's a little bit different than a typical courtroom, a legal case or anything like that. So there are some distinctions to make. But first, let's talk about really what House impeachment investigators, the prosecution, if you will, in this case, is looking to do. What will they come out tomorrow looking to do in regard to this impeachment against the president?
Thank you for having me. So tomorrow begins the impeachment trial in the Senate, and the House managers will be tasked with trying to convince the members of the Senate and really the American public that the two articles that were forwarded to them for abuse of power and for obstruction of Congress have met the legal threshold to equate to what the framers and the founders of the Constitution said that impeachment should entail, high crimes and misdemeanors. So they're going to be tasked with showing their evidence that they have collected or through witness testimony, through House hearings, that would try and make their claim that President Trump has committed an abuse of power by withholding aid to the Ukraine and try to precondition it upon the commencement of an investigation or a meeting with President Zelensky. And then secondly, for the second article, they'll try and show that there was an obstruction of Congress for the failure of some of the administration officials to testify or appear or produce documents to the House managers previously under subpoenas that were issued.
And in regard to the defense, too, so we know what Senate Republicans are looking to do. They don't want, at least to this point, what we've heard, they don't want to have a big trial necessarily with new witnesses brought in, new evidence brought in, or anything like that. So what can we expect from Senate Republicans in this effort? We know that they're going to try to curb this whole process to begin with in its entirety, for the most part. But what should we really be looking out for this week in regard to their efforts?
So the Republican senators are going to have to focus on how the case is going to be presented. The Constitution affords the majority party in the Senate the privileges of deciding how the trial should be prosecuted and what the rules of procedure will be. The Senate, I imagine, will follow precedent that was used during the Bill Clinton impeachment hearings in 1999. And so what that would entail is that the House managers will be afforded 24 hours to present their case, probably over a 2-day period in 12-hour segments. And then the president's team will get to present their defense to those charges, also over a 24-hour period, probably over a 2-day period. It's after the presentation of those cases by the House managers and by President Trump's defense team that the Senate will then decide whether or not they want to seek any additional witnesses or live testimony that would be presented during the trial. That takes just a majority of the Senate members. So we have 47 Democratic senators right now. They would have to peel off 4 Republican senators to get over the majority to vote to require that witnesses would be presented at the case. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. Certainly the final judgment will be by a supermajority, 2/3 of the Senate, and I think it's likely that we already know what the outcome of that vote will be. But in terms of the way that the case is presented, the House managers will have to somehow convince 4 senators from the Republican Party to agree with them to present additional witnesses to be called in front of the entire Senate.
Right, and some of the people, of course, we should be keeping an eye on are people like maybe Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, people who in the past are known to be a little bit more independent when it comes to these types of issues. I mean, we could look back, for example, let's take the Kavanaugh hearing, for example. There were kind of the same suspects in that as well, so you don't necessarily have to imagine too much about who might be the culprits this time around as well. But I do want to talk, too. You're running for Superior Court judge here in San Diego, and I mean, this is a city, too, where, I mean, the justice system is very much so unique compared to other parts of the country. I mean, you could say that about any region. Why is it that you're looking to run this time around?
So I've spent 20 years as a state court prosecutor handling the kinds of cases that a state court superior judge will handle. And they're important cases, the robberies, kidnappings, manslaughter, sexual assault, child molestation. And our criminal justice system is predicated on having a fair trial and that the defendant is afforded their constitutional rights. But you need a judge who understands the proceedings and can preside over them to make sure that they're handled properly. But I guess by contrast, that in an impeachment setting, there is no judge when the House is having their impeachment inquiry hearings. There was no vote on it, and there was no defense. So there was no opportunity to petition a judge or to ask a court, hey, wait a minute, these procedures aren't in accord with how things have been handled in the past. They're not in the same precedent as how they've been handled in the past. So you normally would look to a judge to make some sort of rulings or findings on the constitutional principles at stake. But in the Superior Court setting, I look forward to an opportunity to serve the public and make sure that there is justice for all, and that defendants' rights are protected, but as well as the rights of victims and the community and witnesses and the police that come before the court setting.
Yeah, in fact, when we walked into the building, you and I looked at the Constitution on the wall right there, and we kind of talked about how important it is to follow something like that. Because around the world right now, I mean, people who don't have a Constitution, it's kind of a time where they're kind of fighting over what they are going to follow in the rule of law. I mean, it's not necessarily something that you want to leave up to fate or whoever's in power at that very time. But also, before I let you go really quick, if people want to learn more about your campaign, I know we've been flashing your website right there. Where can they learn more about it?
Thank you. www.markskeelsforjudge.com. That's my name, MarkSkeels for judge.com.
Yeah, we have the link right there if anyone of our viewers want to go check it out. But Mark, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and providing your insight on the eve of this very big day for the nation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.